Welcome back to Season 5 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 180, Season 5, episode 17. So I gotta say, Happy New Year! Today is the day that we start 2019, and I'm honored to be here with you on New Year's Day and sharing the great stories and the great information. And so the first thing I want to get into today is a little bit of preparedness planning for 2019. So if you haven't done it yet, you need to really sit down and take a look at your area and figure out what are the threats in your area. So for example, for me, we're talking wildfire, earthquake, maybe, up here in the foothills, unless we have a worldwide scenario like I present in my books. It's really not going to affect us too much up here. But earthquakes, wildfires, economic depression, if something were to happen and then I have the people from the Bay Area headed our way. So these are the things that you really need to sit down in your area and figure out, what do we have threat from? Do you have a threat from flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, wind events? If something does happen economically, are you going to be flooded over with people? And then you got to begin to, develop plans for how to handle that. And not just, one plan. Like, this is it. This is what we're doing. You need to have at least three, an A, B, and a C. 2 is one is none. But in this case, the more plans you can have for different scenarios and how you'd react to those, the better. So sit down, start writing it down, start figuring it out. Especially if you're like the only one in your family that's planning. Because if something happens, then your family is going to wish they were planning, and they're going to come to you for direction. Now, if you have this written down in an area, if you're not available to them, you have your plan written down so that they know which way they need to go, what they need to do, where things are stored, and things like that. The other thing I want to talk about is having a folder that has all your important documents in it. Copies of, I carry my originals, but I would at least have copies of your birth certificates, your marriage certificate if you're married, insurance plans, deeds to the house, titles to the vehicles, everything that you could possibly think of that shows ownership to your home, to your vehicles, the insurance on those vehicles, your family's information as far as documentation goes, that information, social security cards, all needs to be in a folder. Also, credit card bills, sometimes, you can have the credit card numbers, things like that. It's not as easy to use the numbers as it was before because of all the identity theft and things like that, but still not a bad idea to have that kind of information documented in a folder in a safe location, because you want to be able to access it in time of emergency, but you don't want somebody to be able to come into your house and just grab your folder of all your important stuff. So put it away someplace non-obvious. There's lots of great hiding places. I don't really want to talk about them because I might be giving away some of mine, but I don't keep my important jewelry in my jewelry box, right? It's too obvious. Somebody's going to come into your house, they're going to hit your jewelry box. So you store those kinds of things in a different location, which might not be as obvious to somebody who comes into your house and wants to loot your stuff. That's another thing you should have on hand. You should have cash on hand for emergencies. However, you don't want to have $1,000 and $100 bills, okay? Because if I'm still dealing with a little bit of a cold here. If economic disaster does hit, you don't want to have just $100 bills. If a loaf of bread costs $10 and all you have is that $100 bill, guess what? Now that loaf of bread just costs you $100. They might have change. So make sure you have small bills stacked up, 10s, 5s, 1s, plus up to your big bills for, bigger things that you might have to worry about. But have that cash on hand, because if the electronics go down, then what do you got with a card? Nothing. So a little bit of, I want to just get your brains rolling and thinking about, we've all thought about this before. If you've been listening to my podcast for a long time, it's something that we've talked about before. But really, the beginning of the year is a great time to shore up and make sure you have all of those plans in place and everything that you're going to do in place. So my objective for 2019 is obviously a continued focus on self-defense. My foot is just about better. I've got about another week. Well, actually, when this podcast comes out, I've got about one more day. Whoop, whoop. So I'll be back on my feet, back to training. I can't do a lot of severe training until the middle of February, but I'm still going to be back on my feet and going. So self-defense, always important, because that is a skill that's going to help you every single day. It's going to help you stay fit. It's going to help you live a better lifestyle. It's going to help you feel more empowered. And if the situation arises where you need it, you got it. So self-defense, always my primary focus. And then I also want to focus on medical information. So I trained as an EMT. However, that was a long time ago. And I want to make sure that I'm shored up as far as, if somebody hurts their foot, if somebody has a heart attack, if somebody, there's so many things that can happen medically. If somebody sustains a bullet wound, we've been through that, what to do. And I know a lot more information about it, but I'm still not feeling very confident on it. And it's not something that I like to do. I don't like to have people's lives in my hands, but that might be the situation one day. So we have to be ready for that. So that's going to be another big focus of mine for the year. So why don't you guys go ahead and pick your focus, what you think you need to work on for the year, and start planning that out for 2019. So I want to take a minute to thank my Patreons. Really appreciate you guys. You're my rock stars out there keeping the show going. And if you would like to become a Patreon member, get access to all of the great background information, the clips that I take out of the podcast, the Las Vegas years, I got a couple sections of that out, and definitely early access to all of my book releases. And go on over to www.patreon.com/changingearth, or head on over to my website, www.author.sarafhathaway.com. And there's a couple of payment options. You can either go monthly or yearly. Really appreciate all you guys do, and I can't thank you enough. So thank you for sticking with me for the new year, and Happy New Year to you. So last week on the Changing Earth podcast, I had the little scene between Erica and Bennett, classic Erica Bennett moment where she's being a little bit mischievous and, of course, gets busted by Bennett. And then Victoria gets dragged into it. And so a lot of fun there. That was a cool little chapter I put together. This week, Cassidy arrives home, and it's a great interview this week. I have Ben Brenham back on the show, and he is talking about crowd control. And this is one you're going to really want to pay attention to, because he has some great tips on how to, stay safe in crowd situations, how to control crowds, and a really spectacular interview. So you're definitely going to want to stick around for that interview and really get out your notebooks and take notes, or just head on over to my website. I have blogs on every single podcast I do where you can go and get all the information in written form. So you can just go over there, and I have the my survival guide there, and it's got every single podcast episode, all the information. So, if you want to just listen, you're in your car or whatever, you want this information, you're going to need this information. It's really spectacular interview. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into chapter 17, Dark Days of Death.
Chapter 17. The day finally arrived when Cassidy returned with her team. It was late in the afternoon. Erica was in Gear's shop helping him grind new blades he was making to arm the refugees. The door to the shop flew open, and Cassidy entered with Philip and Eli. They looked dirty from days on the road, and Cassidy's brown hair was ratty. "Hey there, little sis," Gear bellowed as she entered. He dropped his tools and went to embrace her. A moment of sickening realization hit Erica. Sis? Did he say sis? She wondered. That means the man I killed and the father he talks about are the same man. Erica's mind spun. As she connected the dots, she looked for an escape route, but there was none. They were standing in front of the door. "Hi, Gear. How the hell are you?" Cassidy inquired, returning the greeting and hugging him tightly. "Can't complain," Gear replied. "Well, I could, but it wouldn't make a difference anyhow." Cassidy laughed at his joke. "Bennett told me Erica was here with you. I gotta say, I'm surprised. You took that well." Gear was confused. "Erica?" he wondered, shaking his head. "This is Karen. What did I take well?" Erica knew there was no maintaining the ruse with him now. She stepped forward to clear the air. Gear, my name is really Erica Moore. I'm the lone survivor of Sacramento, she admitted honestly. He looked at her with disbelief, and then his face distorted into a look of anger. He spun on his heels and whipped the metal for the knife he was working on at the wall. Cassidy realized that her brother had no idea who Erica was. She braced for the impact this knowledge was about to have on him. Thinking fast, Erica tried to find something to say that would make it better. I'm sorry, Gear. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. If the feds knew I was here, it would put everyone in danger. You bitch! You killed my father, he raged. He turned and flew across the shop. In an instant, he was holding Erica to the wall by her neck. I could break you like a twig, he barked at her. Eli and Philip went to restrain the man, but Cassidy held them back, waiting to see how this would play out. Erica did not fight back. He was her friend, and she felt he was right to be angry with her. She deceived him and unknowingly lied to his face. Gear, don't, Cassidy urged her brother finally. She was watching Erica's face turn blue. I challenged her. I hated her. We fought with knives to the death, and she's a skilled warrior. I have the scars to prove it, but she's also a skilled leader. Think about what you are doing. The resistance needs her alive. I don't give a crap about the resistance. My father was a misdirected coward, but he died by this woman's hands, he seethed, tightening his grip. Erica was beginning to lose feeling in her body and was turning limp. Gear, stop, Cassidy demanded. She's my friend and a respected fighter. I will never forgive you if you do this. Eli spoke up, unable to watch Erica's life drain from her body. Gear, Cassidy is telling the truth. You need to let it go. Hearing the words of the man who helped to train him and looking into his sister's eyes, Gear's vision became clearer. Cassidy had always been tenacious, and he respected her for that. He looked at Erica, struggling to breathe, and released her. She fell to the ground, gasping for air. I have more reason to respect her than I do my own father, he told Cassidy. You know I love Dad, but what's done is done. She did what she did to save the soldier she was with. Her warrior spirit dominated the day. It wasn't easy for me to come to terms with that either, but I have. This is life now, Cassidy explained, helping Erica to her feet. You okay? Oh yeah, Erica gasped. It's nice to see you, Cassidy. I didn't realize this was the brother you warned me about. Gear took his Nordic name after Dad formed the Western Resistance, Cassidy explained, eyeballing her brother. She obviously wasn't too happy with his decision. It's a name I could respect, he defended. The Nordic gods smiled upon me the day I made it official. Erica, can you come with me? We need to talk, Cassidy requested. She'd heard about Gear's gods often enough to know it wasn't something she wanted to listen to again. Sure, Erica replied. You guys can talk here, Gear suggested, suddenly feeling left out of the loop. You don't want to hear about this. It's just resistance talk, Cassidy told him. Maybe I do, he countered. Okay then, Philip, will you check the perimeter, Cassidy wondered. Philip was Cassidy's personal guard. His hair, mustache, and trim beard were jet black. He'd worked in security since before the Great Quake, and he moved with purpose. He went out the door and returned a few minutes later with a thumbs up. Taking a post at the door, he vigilantly watched for anyone coming their way. Eli, do you want to lay it out? Cassidy requested, sitting down to a glass of water that Gear was pouring her. The time to move on Denver is fast approaching. The last quake took a big toll on the Central Zone. They lost a nuclear power plant on the Illinois coastline. The fallout is affecting the Appalachian Zone as well. We're having a hard time getting people out because the ships can't move through the radiation. While the feds deal with that, we need to be taking the western region. It's time to step out of the shadows, Erica, and start rallying the troops, Eli explained. It's about time, Erica replied. Gear stood there, soaking in all they said. Cassidy watched him curiously. Are you going to fight with us, brother? She asked. I need to discuss it with my family and the fighters. That battle may be too close for comfort. What if they come for the homesteads while your forces are in Denver, he worried. You can make your own decision, just like you always have. I'll let you know when we're ready to head out, Cassidy told him. Come on, I need to go speak with Lieutenant General Merkley, Cassidy told Erica. I can't walk out the gate, Cassidy, Erica told her. Then how the heck do you get home, she wondered. I know a hole in the fence that I use, Erica explained. I'm not authorized to be here. I'll just sneak out, get my guard, and meet you at the base. Philip, go and get her guard over here. We're walking out the gate. Erica Moore will not sneak around in my home, Cassidy announced sternly. Philip went and retrieved Victoria. Her eyes were wild with indecision, but they all walked together towards the main gate. Lars Creed, the older man who owned the homesteader's land, received word of Cassidy's return and met them at the gate. Hello, young lady. It's great to have you back, Lars declared cheerfully. But his grin turned to a scowl when he saw Erica. Why is she here? He asked, pointing at her. She's my guest, Cassidy replied. Do you know what this woman did? Lars accused. She caused the mayor's wife to lose an eye, and she broke 3 of her ribs. Gare and Cassidy chuckled. She probably had it coming, Cassidy said, remembering the foul-tempered woman he was referring to. Do you know who this is, Lars? Lars knew by her demeanor there was something he was missing. I guess not, he replied. This is Erica Moore, the lone survivor of Sacramento, and the savior of the refugees, Cassidy told him. And my son saved your grandson, just so you know, Erica added. Lars was taken back. I expected you to be bigger, he jested. You're just a little thing. Mean, but little. I thought the same thing, Lars, Eli interjected. But damn if this girl can't fight like a Wolverine. I get that a lot, Erica added to their banter. Erica heard a crowd gathering at the gate and whispering to one another. Word of Erica's presence was spreading like a wildfire now. Hopefully Bennett and Merkley would be okay with that, because Cassidy was obviously not asking for permission. She was a part of the civilian militia and did not answer to the mercenary leaders. Eli and Gare hung behind to discuss the state of affairs with Lars as Erica exited the gate with Cassidy, Philip, and Victoria. They closed in tight around Erica as the crowd started pushing in closer and closer to get a better look at the lone survivor. They cheered for Erica and chanted for freedom as she navigated the throng of people. Erica raised her fist into the air, and the crowd erupted into cheering. Making their way towards the military compound, a shot rang out in the crowd. The mercenary forces flooded through the crowd, looking for the shooter. One of the individuals who got in close to Erica so he could touch her gasped for air through a newly formed hole in his chest. The blood splattered onto Erica as he fell at her feet. Come on, Erica, we have to get you out of here, Victoria insisted, standing closely by her and carving a path through the people. Erica watched the man fall as the crowd closed in around them. As she turned her head back, she watched Master Gunnery Sergeant Nicholton and First Sergeant Bennett's bodies emerge through the mass. Erica, here, now, Bennett commanded as they approached. Erica complied all too readily as another shot rang out. A soldier that moved in front of her was shot in the arm. Fall back to the compound, Nicholton commanded as another shot sounded. Erica moved within the circle of soldiers back to the gate. She was escorted inside with Cassidy. Whew! That was fun, Cassidy declared jovially. Philip and Bennett gave her a scornful look that had no effect on her. There goes our cover, Bennett mumbled. It doesn't matter anyway, Bennett, Cassidy told him. Where's Lieutenant General Merkley? She huffed, walking down the hall with Philip in tow. Erica stood for a moment collecting her thoughts. Bennett talked with Nicholton as the guard at the compound was tightened. Bennett finally came over to talk with Erica. Don't look at me like that, Erica told him as he approached. You knew what would happen, he commented. Seriously, First Sergeant, I was going to sneak back out, but Cassidy insisted we use the gate, Erica defended. Are you under her orders, he wondered. No, but, Erica went to counter. Whose orders are you to follow, Bennett asked. Yours, sir, but she said there was no way Erica Moore was sneaking around her home, Erica defended. The great Erica Moore, he grumbled. Don't let it go to your head, Cupcake, he insisted, flicking her on the forehead. They were interrupted by a commotion at the gate as Lieutenant Colonel Burgess came down the hall. You've stirred up a hornet's nest now, Erica, Burgess said, looking out the door. Nicholton, go check it out, Burgess commanded. Yes, sir, he replied, heading out the door. Burgess turned to look at Erica and Bennett. 2 dead and 1 injured just from a stroll across the camp, he said. Erica put her head down, feeling ashamed. Nicholton burst back through the door. Riots? Burgess asked. No, sir, Nicholton replied. New recruits. They want to help. They heard Erica is here, and they want to fight with her. We'll need all the help we can get to take Denver, Burgess remarked. Staff Sergeant Merkley left his father's office and joined the group in the lobby. The lieutenant general sent me to start getting the new recruits signed up, he explained. He took a group of men out the door. As he left down the walkway, Vince approached with Star. Is Erica okay? Vince asked Nicholton as he entered. 100% intact, Nicholton replied, opening the door further so he could see his wife. Relief swept over Vince as his eyes locked with Erica's. I guess the jig is up, he said as he crossed the lobby floor and clung tightly to her. Cassidy made one hell of a grand appearance, Erica noted, hugging Vince tightly. She's here? Where is she? He wondered, looking around. Talking with Lieutenant General Merkley, Erica explained. Are the kids okay? Erica wondered. Dexter's out at the homesteads with Johnny, but I thought Daniel was still here. He hasn't been home all day, Vince noted. Star, Erica began. Nope, Bennett interrupted, overhearing the conversation. I'll take care of this. He left out the door before Erica could object.
Unhappy with Cassidy's decision to let Erica's identity out, Bennett heads out to round up the rest of the family. And the crowd that they had to face was an interesting situation as they came across the yard there from the homesteads to the base. You know, once everybody knew that it was Erica, she had a much different situation trying to make it across the camp and kind of realized, you know, why it was so important that her identity not be known. And crowds are something that happen all the time. You know, there's all kinds of riots that happen in the city. You could just be at a ball game and they win and everybody goes crazy. And so being in a crowd is something that's really, really intimidating to me. And here to talk to us about it today is Ben Brenham. Ben Brenham's a firearms instructor. He's loved shooting since the first time he pulled a trigger at age 8. During high school, he volunteered at his local PD where he learned more about handguns. He joined the Marine Corps Infantry after high school. He was a reserve for 10 years with 2 years of active duty and 1 tour in Iraq in 2003. He worked for an armored car company for almost 7 years, mostly in the LA area of California. During all that, he got a degree in law enforcement and went through 2 different police academies. Being a cop never worked out, but through it all, he's always been training people to fight. He spent all of 2008 in Iraq again as a private contractor defending a base. There he got to teach and train with the U.S. Army and others. Now, his goal is to bring that experience and his joy of teaching to others. He loves teaching firearms and wants the good people of the world to be able to defend themselves. It's now his mission and his purpose in life. Ben has an awesome podcast, and you can check it out at www.modernselfprotection.com. That's www.modernselfprotection.com. And he's always got classes going all across the country and things. He's a great guy to learn from, really just a spectacular gentleman, and I'm honored to have him on the show. So let's go ahead and welcome Ben to the show. Today, I am honored to be back with Ben Brenham, my good buddy down in Texas. Hopefully, we're going to be doing some shooting soon because I'm going to be headed your way. So thanks so much for joining me today. I know it took some time out of your schedule.
Nope. Happy to be here. Love talking to you.
Yeah, it's always my pleasure. I'm like, oh, I get to pick Ben's brain today. Yes. So, and today I'm picking your brain on something that's pretty important. It's crowd control. And as I told you kind of in the intro, I'm just this little gal, 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing, even 100 and something less now that I've lost all this weight. My husband's real stoked because he can throw me around more in jiu-jitsu now because I weigh less. I'm like, hey, that's not a good thing.
That's not cool.
So, yeah. So you're a nice big dude. I'm sure, crowds aren't as intimidating for you, but I really wanted to address crowd control. So why don't you just do...
Crowds should be intimidating to everyone because if they surge, you're talking about thousands of people that are pushing in one direction. Doesn't matter how big you are, they're going to overrun you, overthrow you, crush you, move you. it's hard. So yeah, I know you got lots of questions. We'll get into the questions and get specifics. And just yeah, you should be afraid of a large crowd, no matter how big you are or how bad you are, because if they surge, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. It's the mow effect. Just get mowed down. Yeah, I was at a concert one time and that happened, and man, it was all my brother could do to hold on to his little sister tight, right, and make sure I didn't get just trampled. So thanks, bro. I appreciate that one. So Ben, why don't you go ahead? Everybody knows who you are on the show, but go ahead and just introduce yourself a little bit and let the listeners know what you're all about. You probably got stuff going on. You always got stuff going on. So
I have Christmas going on right now, but I'm Ben
right.
Branham from Modern Self Protection. My podcast and blog and everything is modernselfprotection.com. I do self-defense stuff for everyday people. I do believe that a gun is one of your best self-defense things, so I teach a lot of self-defense handgun, and I don't all the stuff that I do, I don't teach stuff that's super duper operator stuff anymore. I used to do all that stuff in the military in a past life and law enforcement and stuff, and now I just try to teach civilians. Let's start at the basics and let's do even more than the basics. What can I teach you in 1 or 2 days that you can take for the rest of your life and pretty much win any gunfight? So that's what my classes are all based around. My podcast is all based around really being able to get little pieces of information out to you that you can make your life better and safer today. And like we're going to do in this podcast today, just talking about crowd control. This isn't super duper whiz bang. Let's go practice the jiu-jitsu and karate moves for the next 6 months or 2 years so I can do this. No, this is stuff that you can use mentally to see the crowd moving, to see what's going to happen, to get yourself out of a bad situation. It's not something you have to practice. It's just knowledge you can gain and use.
Awesome. Yeah, that's that. I was just telling my mom that the other day. It's like, so everybody's talking gun control. Guns are the great equalizer. My mom's even smaller than I am, if you can believe that. She's 4'9" and like 90 pounds. There's no way if somebody comes in that's a 280 guy, she's going to be able to physically move them. She can't physically move me. So I was just telling her, how important that having that piece of self-defense is, and I'm proud of her. She's a concealed carrier and, does a good job of keeping her skills up and stuff. But it's like, people need to sit down and really realize that before they start thinking about taking away that method of self-defense.
Yeah, especially as we get older and we age. You get the young guys that are straight out of college that played football or wrestled, and those people, they're amazing specimens of human beings and what strength and power can do. And then once we get into our 50s, 60s, and 70s, we just can't stand up to that much force to our bodies anymore. Bodies are old and broken, so we need that great equalizer where we can use our mind and our tactics to outdo people like that.
Yeah, reach out and touch them. All right, Ben. So let's start with one of the scenarios from my book. And what's happening is Erica is leaving the homestead. She's trying to get back over to the base where they're housing her. And now everybody knows who she is. She only has a couple of guards and she has to traverse this crowd that basically is collapsing on her because everybody, it's Erica Moore and I got to see her, I got to touch her kind of thing, right? So how would you even begin to, it's probably not a good scenario to be in, and her sergeant clearly lets her know that it wasn't a good scenario to be in, but how would you even begin to handle this type of an issue?
Yeah, that one's almost impossible looking at the crowd. Your first thing is to escape or to use a diversion to spread the crowd. The tighter they get, the less you're going to be able to move and the less space you need between people. So really, if you said she had 2 guards with her, really they need to put her between each other and like hug her almost and try to get through the crowd and push their way through. Sometimes that works. Sometimes you can pick your way through, but it depends on how far the crowd is surging. We talked about that a little bit. If 500 people are in this little group and they all try to crush into the center, you're not going to be able to move because that much people can actually lean on each other, and the people in the center, it can take your breath away that they're so compressing you and start to strangle you and crush you. So getting through that is kind of hard. You really need a distraction device to start spreading the crowd, or if it's not quite there yet where they're at that surge point, and you'll know the surge point when the whole crowd moves at one thing. That's what I mean by a surge. If it's just 1 or 2 people that are, like where the people right around you see what's going on, then you can start pushing people out of your way and you can start picking your way through the crowd. And movement is life. And anytime you're moving to a crowd, you want to move perpendicular to their mode of travel. So if the crowd is moving down the street, straight down the street, you want to cut across the street, and generally up against a wall and outside to the fringes of the crowd are a good way to move. This one's impossibly hard because they're trying to get to her, and it
Right.
might not, it's not even a bad thing where they're trying to kill her or something. They're just trying to get to her to see her what's going on, and they're in the middle of it. This is bad, but actually in that scenario, I might pull out my gun and start firing into the air to try to disperse the crowd a little bit, just so we can get out of there. And that's
I was going to say the distraction comes because people are actually trying to shoot her too. So, you know, even though that's a bad scenario, other people get hit by the gunfire, it actually provided that type of distraction disbursement for the crowd to go, holy crud, you know, we don't want to be doing this anymore.
And then no matter what you do, it's people are stupid, and there's the
especially
best
in a
line.
mob.
Yeah, the best line was ever in Men in Black, where he talks to the guy coming on, Will Smith, and he's like, you know, people individually are smart and you can reason with them and they're good people. As a group, they're stupid, they're panicky, and they follow each other like lemmings off of a cliff. So
Right.
it's hard. You got to understand that dynamic of the crowd when you start playing with it. So if other people are shooting into the crowd from outside and I'm trying to get away, I might use the crowd as cover and move through and just drag her along with me, and that should disperse the crowd enough so I can pick my way through it. And even if you pull your gun in the middle of the crowd and start firing into the air, you'll get a bunch of people that go, "Oh crap, I don't want to play anymore. I'm out of here." But other people are going to stand there like lemmings and be like, "What's going on? How come everybody's not moving? Why are we still here? Oh, we're going this way?" Yeah. Derpa, 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 and just follow the whole crowd. And just even when it gets to the point where it's violent and people know it, people are throwing rocks, people are getting hurt, people are getting shot, they all just kind of stand there. And it's like the whole crowd needs to come to this whole collective of what's going on and what they're going to do. And then you start to get this big panic and they'll move. But until then, they're all kind of like, which way did he go, George? And they all just kind of stand there. And some people will be smart and they'll think for themselves, and then others will follow, and then you'll start to get this cascade effect, and then you'll get the whole crowd to surge one way or the other. But it really takes a while for that group think, I call it, to get moving. And the more people you get together in a small area like that, it's just the stupider the crowd gets and the dumber things they will do.
Isn't that just crazy? That's why I just don't, I just know I'm so little. Just please stay away from that kind of stuff, or stay to the outside. Like I was telling you at the beginning, I've done mosh pits, and it's just stay to the outside because I can't get in there, and it's bad for me, very bad.
I'm with you. I don't like to play with crowds either, and I'm a big guy at 320 pounds and 6'2". I mean, I can push my weight around like anybody, but a big crowd is just, they're going to push you around. Things can happen, and then that's not to mention if they're actually after you and trying to hurt you, and that's really bad because they can get really close without you seeing them with weapons and everything else. So the crowd is kind of going away from this scenario a little bit. The crowd is very, very emotional and panicky, and emotion spreads like wildfire when people are so close. If a bunch of people start getting afraid, that emotion will go through the crowd like wildfire, and then the crowd will be panicky and run. If the crowd starts to get angry, that will go through the crowd like wildfire. And that's where we see a lot of the stuff actually that's happening today. And it happened last month in France. It happens in the United States and stuff. They get this crowd together, and generally the crowd is peaceful. They're there to protest whatever they are, but they're a little bit angry because something happened. And then it gets more and more angry and more angry, and that just builds off of each other. And it's this beast that grows into one thing that's just all anger. And the anger turns to violence when one person throws a rock, and then you got this group think that it's just this large crowd throwing it, and I don't have any accountability for myself. So then you see people turning over cars, blowing things up, throwing rocks at the police, running at the police, all this stuff. And it can go really, really fast downhill. And so that's for you guys that are really dealing with crowds. Be careful. Get away from the crowd. If they start to get violent, if they start to get panicky, if you'll feel it in the air if you get inside the crowd. It's kind of like going to if you go to a big concert and you go out on the lawn when you get everybody together. When the first act goes on, you're like, oh yeah, this guy's just here because he's the opening act, and nobody cares. But when the real act is going to come on, you can feel the electricity in the air and the excitement and people getting ready to go. Well, that works the same way in a mob situation where somebody's there for violence or something, or in your book where they're all all of a sudden they see her and they get all excited and they get that electricity and that excitement in the air and they all push through. And then that changes when shooting starts. And now it takes the crowd. Half of the crowd is going, "Oh my God, let's get the hell out of here," and the other half of the crowd is going, "Derpa derpa, what happened?" And it will take them a while to get all of that done. And then once they get into that and they get into the panic, the crowd doesn't split like you see on TV where everybody just runs in a different direction. Nope. When the crowd splits, they will surge all in one direction. Like the whole crowd will move one way or the other. Doesn't matter what's there too, because it would move right into the building. There's stories on 9/11 where the buildings were coming down, where I know one law enforcement officer that he was pinned against the building and and they were all trying to get under this little eave as like the building was coming down. And the whole crowd, everybody's monkey see, monkey do, and they start pressing more and more against this building. And he's on the inside with a couple other police officers, and they're all getting crushed. And the people next to him are getting crushed. They can't breathe and stuff. One of the officers was able to get his pistol out and shoot through the glass to create more space so everybody could get inside to actually save a bunch of people that were there from getting crushed just by the crowd and for having stuff fall on them. But that was probably only a couple hundred people. That wasn't 1,000. And they were killing the people inside because the crowd surged to the one spot they thought was safety up against that building, even though there was about half as much space as they really needed there for that many people. So yeah, they were actually killing people on the inside, had no idea. And that's why I say it gets really, really scary, really, really fast. And you've got to be able to see that coming and go the other way is really your safest bet.
Find your own zone, but then people might follow you too. I mean, you could be in that same situation again. That's really spooky. The other thing that you said was, the lack of accountability. We see it on the internet all the time, right? When people don't know who you are, you make comments or whatever that you wouldn't make in person. But when you're in that mob and you don't think that you're going to be singled out, makes you kind of more likely to do things that you wouldn't normally do, right? Because you don't think people are going to actually see you.
And you have the crowd cheering you on. You feel like you're in the middle of a football game and you're winning when you throw a rock because everybody is cheering for you and how great it is that you threw a rock at the police department or you lit the car on fire or I got news for you. There's cameras everywhere nowadays. You're going to get caught. They'll find you later.
Right.
They don't put that on TV, but
all the facial recognition technology too. That's spooky stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then you start and then everybody takes pictures and they post themselves on the internet. Look at, I was at the riot. And you're like, hey, that looks like the guy that threw the rock. Look at that. Match the picture. It doesn't take a genius to figure some of that stuff out. But that's, I know none of your listeners, I know that sounds, I'm warning people, but I know none of your listeners would get involved in that and be dumb enough to start throwing rocks at police officers and stuff. But, you get into the crowd and all of a sudden you feel like you should do things that you shouldn't. And then everybody's like, oh, hey, let's have fun. And you're like, you got to be able to step away. And when it starts to get to that violent point, as soon as the first rock is thrown, there'll be another one. Broken window of policing. It's real in a crowd situation. If one rock's thrown, hundreds are going to get thrown and the crowd is going to turn violent. And if they turn violent against somebody and then that somebody leaves or something happens, they'll turn violent against somebody else because they have this rage and violence already happening in the crowd's culture. Yeah, it's like a fire that's just fueling itself, and it goes downhill real fast. So when the crowd starts to get violence, that's your cue to go. Time to go. I don't need to be here.
Get out of here.
It's going to get bad. And I say get bad. Years ago we had the Ferguson riots and everything else, and I was trained in riot control with law enforcement and riot control with military. Two different stories completely. You do not want our military doing riot control in the United States. They're pretty mean. Law enforcement is they're pretty tame, nice. They try to let you go. They try to let things happen. But I mean, one of the biggest tactics and the best tactics they can use as law enforcement when they want to disperse the crowd is start chasing the crowd around. If they keep the crowd moving, the crowd will peter out and get tired and it'll start to disperse on its own. So you'll see law enforcement start pushing people around and you'll see their lines move. It's not because they're just being mean. They're trying to they'll make the crowd run in circles just so it gets tired and people start leaving and disperses a little bit.
Yeah, they're like, this is too much work. Okay.
Yeah, but to get the crowd moving is it's a huge, huge undertaking. Military, they're really cool. They'll get the crowd moving by using tanks. I've actually been trained to use an M1 Abrams as a crowd control device. So that sounds bad, but the tank has an exhaust. It's a jet a jet turbine engine that puts out, 1 billion horsepower that should go on. It's a Pratt and Whitney jet engine that should go on a jetliner somewhere.
Okay.
And it puts out, its exhaust is a couple million degrees almost. And it's not that hot, but it will melt. If you put your car next to the tank, it would melt the paint on your car. It's super hot.
Okay.
So the military, if they have tanks available, will just back the tanks up and have their driver rev the engine and just start inching the tanks forward, because it is hotter than snot. You're not going to stand there when it's hot enough to melt the car, the paint off of your car. You start moving real fast. So it's kind of a trick of military to get the crowd moving. And the tank is big and intimidating, and if you stand there, it will crush you. But they'll turn the gun that way to look at all the people, just so it looks all scary and stuff. But they're using the tank as just a big heat source to get the crowd to move back.
Game too.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Yeah, when you see 3 tanks across the street, you're like, that's a
tank.
tank.
I think I'm not gonna go over that way. Yeah, fair enough.
You see them on TV and stuff, but until you've actually stood next to one that's rumbling and running, it's pretty awesome just to be next to it. And you're like, holy Toledo. And and when they all move just like down the street, you can feel them from a couple 100 yards away. They're so heavy that you can like feel it go clunk, 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 clunk in the earth below you. So it's pretty intimidating to get people moving. But I mean, that's stuff like, that's the mean stuff too, because we can't put a spotter out there like we normally would, so we wouldn't run over people. So when the tanks are going, if you laid down, nobody would ever see you. And in the Marine Corps, tankers and trackers, they call infantry guys crunchies, because that's the sound they make when you run over them.
Oh no.
So so military, they're really mean. If you laid it in front of the tank and said, I'm not going to move, well, honestly, nobody would probably see you, and they would know when they hear the crunch sound of you, the tank flattened you. So that's why I said the military could be a lot meaner than law enforcement on a lot of the stuff they do for crowd control.
That was going to be one of my questions to you. Like, if, shooting did start out or something like that, the crowd's kind of surging, would you want to do like the play dead kind of thing, or would you just get totally moshed and trampled? I mean,
if you're on the edge of the crowd and the crowd's moving away from you, the play dead might work. But if you're in the middle of the crowd or you're going the way the crowd is, yeah, you need to keep going, because it's going to be a dog pile, or people are going to trample you to death, vehicles, the whole 9 yards. Playing dead is, it's a kid's game of hide and seek, but if you lose, you die. So I generally, even in like the mass shootings and stuff, people are like, run, hide, fight. And I'm like, well, if you play the hide game and that's all you do, you're playing hide and seek. And if they find you, your life's over. So, I mean, and what happens when you play hide and seek as a kid? If you look at your kids play, or if you remember back in the day when you used to do it, eventually somebody will find you. It just takes enough time. So the whole play dead thing is just a race against time. Is the crowd going to disperse and be gone, and law enforcement's going to roll over, or they're going to go another way before I get found? Or is it going to be I get found and trampled to death before then?
Before that happens.
Yeah, and same thing with the mass shootings. It's that, am I going to get found by law enforcement or the bad guy first? So who's, I don't like the play dead thing. I never have. Maybe that's the fight in me.
That's me. It's like, I would rather go and I'll face the threat then. I'm not going to hide,
And then for your listeners too, if it gets really bad and shooting starts and violence starts, if you run at the police officer, it's going to suck a lot, because he's probably going to knock you down and put you in cuffs and drag you off. But he will drag you behind a barricade and put you in an armored vehicle where you will no longer be able to get shot. He will take care of you. I mean, that's even in the military. That's one of the rules of prisoners. You got to take care of them. You got to keep them safe.
Yep.
So I know that might suck that you're like, I run at the police officer and he'll say, stop, get back. And you might get batoned. But if people are machine gunning, if somebody's machine gunning the crowd, the law enforcement will drag you with him when he goes for cover. So at least it's a horrible, horrible way to try to take cover if somebody's shooting in the crowd, but it is a way.
It is an effective way. Fair enough. So what if you have people with you that you can, so you're with a whole group of people, could you use your group to kind of help the situation?
Yes and no. There's a point of diminishing returns. So we would run, law enforcement, we call them tango teams. We'd run little teams, and it would be 8 guys. If you get anything bigger than that, the crowd can split your group. So I really think a squad or half a squad. Squad in the Marine Corps was 13. Half a squad would be 7. So a boat team for all you guys that love the SEALs out there is about this perfect size group to move around in a crowd because you can stay close enough together so you can stay connected. And then you have enough mass to push through the crowd and grab somebody if you have to. But then you don't have this huge group. If you're running 30, 40 people, the group just gets too big, too spread out. And somewhere that crowd is going to surge and cut your group in half. And then you spend all your time trying to keep the group together. So if you're caught in a crowd with a large group of, we'll say a platoon size, 30 or 40 people, it would be better to split up in groups of 5, 7, or 8 and just everybody make their own way out of the crowd and then meet later. And a smaller group will get less notice too. Law enforcement moving through the crowd in a group, everybody notices and everybody follows them. The same thing with your group. If you're in the middle of this crowd and things start going south and 40 of you go, hey, we need to get out of here. This is looking really bad. And you all go, yeah, let's go. And then all of you move the same direction. Well, now you have this nucleus of people moving and everybody next to you moves and, monkey see, monkey do. And you might have the whole lemming thing that follows you. So breaking it up in smaller crowds. And we tested this through crowds and we played with it too. And it seems that 8 to 10 people is like the perfect size to be able to have enough force, enough manpower, enough push to get through the crowd, but then be small enough to where they can stick together and still move through the crowd.
Okay, so like if you had to retrieve somebody from out of the crowd or something like that, that's probably your best bet as far as your group to take with you.
Yeah, and that's exactly what law enforcement tango team tactics were for. They would split the shields and out would run 8 guys with clubs to grab somebody that was throwing rocks or something. They would designate somebody and be like, hey, that's the guy that's starting to create problems.
He's the one firing it up. Okay, got you.
Go grab him and get him out. And that was in law enforcement, that's a huge tactic too. And I don't see that very much at Ferguson and all this other stuff. That's an LAPD thing. And honestly, LA has riots probably more than anybody else, but they are probably the world's leading police department.
Yeah, they've got tanks too down there.
Yeah, pretty much. But they're some of the best at it. So you don't see the news media of them, beating people or grenades or any of that stuff because it just doesn't last long. If they decide the crowd's going, and they will push it around and use all that stuff to get them moving. If not, they will just I don't know how to call it, but the person that's agitating all the violence in the crowd that would be handing rocks to people and to throw and stuff. They won't just go after that rock thrower. They'll go after the guy that's doing that, and they'll send a little tango team of 8 to 10 guys out there, and those guys will run out there, surround him, snag him, and drag him off like it was the middle of the night and nobody ever saw him again. So it looks bad, but it works really well. And they may not be able to hold him. They may be able to hold him. That's a whole legal issue, but that one kind of sucks.
At least it disperses it for the moment, though. I mean, either way, at least you get rid of the problem so it doesn't escalate any farther.
Right, and that's their whole idea, is just to let the crowd calm itself down and kind of run its course and run itself out so that nobody else gets hurt.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like you say, you get the mentality of just bloop, you're not even there anymore, and then you realize, what were we doing the next day?
You're like, oh, that was pretty cool. I flipped over that car and we set it on fire. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
But now, why would I have done that? Yep.
You're like, I see that video of me doing that, and I wonder if this is going to come back to hurt me now. Yeah.
Right?
So a lot of that stuff happens, and then we're also in the age of professional crowd agitators. It's getting to that point, and those have been around.
People to do that, yeah.
And that's been around for a long time with unions and stuff. My father-in-law, he was he got paid a couple times when his union was out of work, and he had to do. He went and did. He was part of a professional crowd. The union paid him to go to a different state and be part of the crowd, and so it was just to get more people there. They were a little bit. Now there's rumors of people doing that, and they pay you more if you get arrested, and if you can get more people arrested, they'll pay you more money. It's like if you hurt somebody, they'll pay you more money, and I'm like, this has gone too far. Somebody needs to step in and pull a RICO law on them or something, because that ain't right.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, yeah. Well, we can have a long discussion on ethics that are persisting in our world right now that are not the best.
big frown and put my head down on that one.
Right.
But hey,
That's
I mention it not because, oh yeah, you should get so angry and go do something about it. Well, somebody should, but it might not be you. But you should know that this is happening out there
yeah,
when you see some of these protests. And I'm not going to name names, but there's been a lot of the big names protests out there. I mean, that's what
yeah,
happened. That's how a lot of
yeah,
these protests started, and that's how they keep going. Is somebody's paying to bus people in and paying them to be there and paying them to agitate.
yeah.
And to what degree is a different story. But if you're there, you got to know that this is going on, that the guy next to you that says, yeah, let's get those cops. Somebody
He
could
might
be
be getting
paying
paid.
him a lot of money to say that, and there's
Yep.
really no reason for it.
And you're like, yeah, let's go too. And you ain't making nothing. And now you're going to go to jail for a while. And
Yeah,
yeah,
they ain't going to pay you
yeah.
to get out of jail.
Nope. So we talked about the crowd panicking and the navigating it. So go perpendicular to it, you said, right? Go across the crowd instead of surging with, trying to make your way across.
Yep.
That's kind of
Anyway, they're
like
not coming.
what was the game, Leapfrog or whatever, or not Leapfrog, Frogger, right?
Frogger, yep. Go
But
from
I
safe
find that
spot to safe
actually
spot.
effective as being a small person. There are times when it is easier for me to actually get out of a crowd because I can go low and just stay underneath everybody's, kind of their elbows and everything. So there's times when I can just go zoop 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 through it, and everybody else who's bigger gets kind of stuck. They're like, "Dude, where did you go?"
Well, and
So
then here in America, remember that every building everywhere is required to have an emergency exit on the other side of the building. So if anything goes south, you can always just duck in whatever building you're next to, and then
yeah,
just, even if it's a restaurant, out the back door, out through the kitchen. There's a back door to every single restaurant in America. And,
mhm,
I'll put all the money I have and including my life on that. So, if something really starts going south and you find yourself in this big alleyway, kind of in New York style buildings, and go, oh, wait a second, they're starting to throw rocks. That cop is prepping his riot gun and all that stuff. It's time to go. In whatever building you're next to, just open the door, go in, and just keep going straight, and you'll find your way to the back wall, and then along the back wall you'll find an emergency exit, and just go. I mean, let go of all of the other stuff. It says emergency exit, do not use, alarm will sound.
you're not,
Who
yeah,
cares? Just
who cares?
go.
Yeah,
You know,
that
I
makes
know,
sense.
I know you're not supposed to go in the back of a restaurant unless you work there, but let all those societal norms go when you get these extreme stuff, and just get yourself and your family out of there.
Yeah, and safe. Yeah, because people they get trapped in the situation. They're not even part of you just came out of the restaurant or whatever, and the crowd's outside. Right now, you got to try to make your way to your vehicle with this crowd. Yeah, that would make a complete
Yeah.
sense.
Societal norm, ditch your car, get an Uber ride, go
Right.
the other way. You can come
Get your
back for your
car
car.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully they didn't turn it over and set it on fire with all the others, but you have
Right.
insurance for that.
Yeah.
Who cares? It's not worth your life or risking your life for it and getting hurt, and
Children's.
especially not your family. Because for me,
Yep.
I'm in charge of my family above all else, and my wife and my kid mean more than my life. But hey, the
Yep.
car, whatever, it gets turned over and
Yep.
set on fire. I'll buy another one. It's getting old anyways. It's getting some dents in it. We need something new.
Yeah, it's
I'll
getting
get the
a couple
insurance.
scratches. I got an 18-year-old driving.
There you go. Yeah, so that one's gonna have a couple scratches in it before long.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Just
but
for
yeah,
my
all that stuff.
driveway.
But that's
Yeah.
my normal thing in my podcast is nothing's worth your life really until it
Yeah.
is. There's only very few things. Draw that line. Your family's life is not worth your pride. It's not worth your dignity. It's not worth societal norms because you're not supposed to go out that door because it says do not enter. You know, who cares? Oh, you're not supposed to leave your vehicle because, we're programmed that way.
Yeah.
But who cares if you're downtown and I don't know, the local sports team wins the championship all of a sudden, and then there's a riot that breaks out in front of the sports arena and it travels in front of the restaurant that you're out of all of a sudden. Yeah,
Mhm.
go out the back door. Just keep walking as far away as you can with the crowd. And call your friend, come pick you up, or call an Uber or taxi or something, come pick you up, take you home, go home, turn on the TV, watch it, have a beer, watch the riot on TV, and maybe you'll see your car.
Yeah,
Maybe it'll be
right.
on fire. If not, I mean, the worst thing is that, you and your family get in your other car, you drive back downtown, you get the car the next day, and,
Yeah.
no harm, no foul. It costs
And
you,
everybody's safe. Yeah.
it costs you a drive round trip to downtown and a
Yeah.
couple bucks for the cab ride or the Uber ride or whatever. Yeah, just keep yourself safe. It's not worth it.
Absolutely. So what type of really big threats in a crowd should you be really attentive to? So like if you did go to a protest, there's lots of things we could protest nowadays. What kind of we've talked a lot about the triggers, but let's just name out like some of so I can list them off, some of the main things that we should be alerting on to go, this is going south.
Well, let's start with the basics of if you're going to go into a situation like that. Let's stay on the outside fringes of the crowd. We don't need to be in the
Okay.
middle of everything. So you'll see the nucleus of the crowd, and then you see everybody else that's just kind of hanging out. Be one of those people that's just kind of hanging out. You're there, you'll get in the photo for
Show
the
your
news,
support.
and you'll
Yep.
show your support, and everybody will have flags and stuff. And then you
Mhm.
can kind of stay out there. So if something does happen, it's an easy way out. When
Right.
you're getting there, you also got to look, what is my way out? Have that way out.
Yes.
See that I'm standing in front of a restaurant that's attached to this giant building that I can go in, and there's the kitchen exit. There's the kitchen, and I can just go straight through this restaurant into the kitchen and find that back door and just keep going. So know where your escape valleys are, know where your escape route, where you're standing, see the closest one to you and know where it is. And then kind of remember where your car is and stuff. And then I talked about Uber. Have that stupid Uber app downloaded on your phone with your credit card set up in that. It takes you 30 seconds
Yeah,
to
so
figure
you're
it
not
out.
trying to
Yeah,
do it in the moment.
put your
Yeah,
credit
okay.
card in when a crowd is tracing you and half the city's on fire and you're trying to put your credit card in. No,
Uh-huh.
that would suck.
Yeah,
So that's
big time.
your basic preparation right there. Wear shoes that you can run in or work in. No high-heeled shoes, ladies, because they're awesome to be in a crowd, right? You don't want to get
You
stepped
can
on.
take them off, stab people with it.
Uh, Actually, that would work the best. Besides, wearing them probably wouldn't work as well as stabbing people. But you don't want to be in sandals and a t-shirt and shorts. You want to have
Right.
jeans or rugged pants on, something you would go out in a crowd and in not a pretty crowd, you would go out into the wilderness in, so that if you get knocked down, it's not going to kill you. If you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt and you get knocked down onto some broken glass, that really sucks a lot.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're wearing a long sleeve shirt and jeans and you get knocked down on broken glass, it still sucks. But I
But
put
it's
my
not.
foot, yeah, I put my foot down and I get up and I can brush myself off, and I'm not picking glass out of my skin generally. So
Right.
the kind of those things up front are to think of. Your triggers start to look like, and one place you don't want to be is between the police and the crowd. You don't want to be that first one there, because if
The front line.
if they decide to move people, I mean, one of the way law enforcement moves people is they use rubber bullets. It works
Okay.
great. And
Uh-huh.
military, we're mean. We do that. You'll see guys with lines of shields up. Behind them is guys with shotguns. Behind them is guys with
The rubber
rifles.
bullets. Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, if they decide they're going to move the crowd and they're not moving, you'll see the shields take a knee, and the guys with the shotguns, they'll just aim in and shoot the closest guy in front of them. And if you're standing there, you're the one that gets the rubber beanbag to the gut or the chest or the leg or whatever.
Ow.
And they make some, yeah. So the beanbag rounds just hurt. The rubber rounds work. The fin stabilizer rounds are worse. And then the military has foam and wood batons they shoot out of the M203 grenade launchers. So they're 40 millimeters around.
Oh, geez.
We played with those in the
Crazy.
military, and we started shooting those the wood batons out of there, and it's a 40 millimeter grenade size that comes shooting out of that thing, and we're denning 55-gallon drums with it. I'm like, holy Toledo!
Dang.
Please do not shoot me with one of those.
Right.
It looked like it could break your leg if you got shot. So, anyways,
Jeez,
that's
yeah.
short. That's the long answer to be. Don't be between the crowd and the police, because if things go wrong, it's going to be very, very bad for you.
Right.
And you can look at and then you really wanted to see triggers of what's going to happen. So once one brick is thrown, we talked about that, a bunch of bricks are going to get thrown. If something gets lit on fire, everything is going to get lit on fire.
Okay.
If you start hearing people my trigger is everybody starts saying F the police or get somebody or burn it all to, and
Yeah.
you might hear,
Tear down. Yeah.
yeah, but you might hear one or two people say stupid crap like that, and it's kind of funny. But when you start hearing people repeat it and people chant it, the crowd just went from we're having a peaceful demonstration to violence will ensue shortly. It's time for you to go. And so you
Okay.
listen to what the crowd says, because words mean things. And if they're saying, F the police, no, or no justice, no peace. and you're like, one or two guys yells it, and you're like, well, whatever. That kind of, to me, it's a stupid statement, but you're going to
Right?
create violence because you want
Because you want
justice,
justice
so
and
you can get peace.
peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So the
the logic
and
doesn't follow for me, but
yeah, the equation is not equal.
yeah, we're missing
Yeah.
something. Um, but when they start saying that, and a lot of people start saying that, they're starting to mean what they say. And the more people that say it, the more crowd gets into it, and the more that, I mean, we're impressionable people. We all are.
Yeah.
If you sit there and you chant something forever, you start to believe it. Well, if they spend 20 minutes that says "F the police, kill the police, F the police, kill the police," 10 minutes into that, they start thinking it's okay to kill the
Yeah.
police.
Yeah,
And
we're
all
gonna
these
do
other
that.
people, think it's okay too. So, maybe I'm the freedom fighter here, and we should just go kill all the police. And you're like, oh, wait, as a
Nope.
thinking human being, you're like, that really doesn't compute ever, even in the worst, even in your books and stuff, just go kill all the police, it just never really
Nope.
computes.
No.
So you just need to go time out, think for yourself, and be like, So when they start chanting things together about violence and stuff, it's time to go. The other thing you can look for on cues is, what is law enforcement doing? They may be all in their riot gear and shotguns, all of this stuff, the tank in the background, whatever, but they're all just standing around drinking. They're leaning on their shields. They're in little groups BSing like military and police officers do, because they're better at killing time than anything else in the world.
Right? Yeah.
So they're just killing time, and they're just there in case they need it. So you're like, no big deal. Well, if they start to form up and they start to get organized and they start to do things, it's time to go, because they're going to do things. The other one here in the United States, if they get formed up on a line somewhere and they get all organized, and then you have somebody come over the bullhorn that says, this is an illegal demonstration, disperse now or force will be used. They're not kidding. It's time to go.
It's not a joke. Okay.
And honestly, the really good law enforcement military units will use a crap ton of violence right out of the chute. They will use an immense amount of force that you will not believe if you're standing there. It will start to look like Gettysburg, where the two militaries were online and they shoot each other and half of them fall down. It's going to look bad, really bad when it starts. But the more professional the unit, the more violence they're going to use up front, and it'll subside as it goes. Now, if you're in, I'm not going to name a city, let's call it, the middle of nowhere, USA, with some law enforcement agency that's been ragtag thrown together with 15 different agencies and whoever they could find to put in a law enforcement uniform. They're not going to use a lot of violence up front, but it's going to escalate. Law enforcement will get frustrated. They'll have the same problem the crowd does. The crowd will see one person being picked on more than anything else. The crowd will get more violent. And now we'll have this clash of two armies almost, back in the day with, back in the day with swords and everything else, and they're still both standing there, and then you have this clash of two armies where they're running across to each other in swords like Vikings, and the crowd is among each other and they're beating on each other. Well, that's when you're really in trouble, because nobody is using any restraint against that violence, the crowd or law enforcement. And so people are going to get really, really seriously hurt. Medical ain't coming in to help you, because
they have to put themselves on the risk. Yeah.
Right. The Vikings are fighting somebody else, and they're just not going in the middle. Once it calms down, we'll go in there. They look out and they go, yeah, no, that guy just got his legs taken out. I'm not doing that. So
I was wondering that, like, in law enforcement, especially in the ragtag group that you're talking about, do they have like the mob mentality too? Did they start escalating because of that mob type mentality?
Yeah, the less they've worked together, the less they have confidence in their own skills, the less they have no skills to do, the more it's going to get. And I've worked with Marine Corps units too. In one unit, we were exceptionally well trained in all this stuff. Riot control, I get to play with all the good toys, and we had all the toys and everything, and we were ready to go, and we were a very, very professional unit. I got transferred to another unit, and we were called upon to do riot control in a couple different situations, and it was just like these guys, they didn't know what to do. They started getting that I don't know, that little mob mentality. I was having little groups break off, like 2 or 3 Marines, and I'm like, come back. No, stand here, stand the line. And it was really hard for me to get control of my guys, but that's with a bunch of Marines that are highly trained. I'm their sergeant. They're going to do what I say to the death. These are the guys that I say run that way, and they'll run straight off the cliff because I told them to.
Right.
But yeah, they're having problems holding it together, and that's only in a training scenario too, not really where people are dying. So when people start getting hurt and dying, it gets even more and more where the less professional the unit is, the less training. And professional, that sounds bad, but really,
it's true.
it's
It's
how
just
much.
your organization level.
Right. It's their training and their practice level. I mean, a lot of these guys had 2 hours of law enforcement training in wherever they went, and that's it. It's been 10 years since they've done riot control or even thought about riot control, and now they're out on the line doing riot control. And the car is on fire, and people are throwing bricks at them, and you're watching, and they see the guy next to him get hit in the head with a brick and go down. I mean, it's not that situation where you just sit there and go, huh, well, that sucks. No, they get really amped up too, and they'll get that group mentality. And that's where you'll see law enforcement, and sometimes we'll see it here in the United States where you see 3 guys with batons beating on this guy that's on the ground.
Right.
Same thing happened to them that happened to the
Let's
rest
get
of them.
them.
Yeah. And it's just like, they're like, we're here to stand the line, and we're going to stand the line, and we're going to do the best we can. And then they get all panicky, and they get all together, and they start pushing too. And that's why I say the less professional the unit is, the more the violence is going to escalate until it ends. And that's really, and you can see that with whatever unit you got. If you're out on this, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're in New York City, LA, Austin, Texas, your hometown, wherever you are, if you go out there and the law enforcement is all dressed the same, they all got the same uniform, they all have the same equipment, well, they're all from the same unit. That means they're very highly trained. They've been practiced together, and they know what they're doing. If you get out there and there's 50 cops out there, and they all have different uniforms on, they have different gear. You can sell some are from the sheriff's department, some are from the state police, some are from the locals, some are from, and that's
that it's not going to be as organized. Yeah,
it's not going to be as professional. And so when you think they say, hey, move, and nothing really happens, and they throw like one tear gas grenade into the crowd, and you're like, oh, no big deal, there's one tear gas grenade, and somebody will pick up the tear gas grenade and inevitably throw it back because that's what we do. I don't know why they play catch with the damn things. I hate it because of that. And law enforcement and the crowd are playing catch with tear gas grenades. That sucks until it goes out. But you think, oh, that's no big deal. I can hang out and see what's going on. That's when you're in trouble, because it's going to escalate. That violence is going to start escalating and escalating and escalating. And it's been a long time, but it's happened in the United States where law enforcement has used live rounds to disperse the crowd by shooting into the crowd. You don't want to be there. So that's your dead giveaway is, when they say, hey, it's time to move, and it's a ragtag bunch of cops looking because they're from 15 different agencies standing there with 10 different uniforms on. It's going to look real nice real fast, and then it's going to go downhill really fast. So time to go.
Time to go. Yep. Awesome. Well, I think that about does it for us. We're about out of time, and I've got a much clearer picture on how to, basically what I decided at the beginning is still the same now, that I would not be a part of those crowds. But, there's issues sometimes that we need to speak up for, or it could just be that game. Like you say, you're at the game and suddenly it turns the wrong direction. You just got to know what to do. And I think we got a good grip on it today. I appreciate it.
Cool. And I want you to live life, not be afraid of everything. Go to the football game, go to the concert if that's what you want to do, but have a plan to get out of there.
Yep. Know your exits. It's always a great idea. I always think about that now. And where before I didn't at all. I was just like, oh, here we go. So now it's like, okay, there's the routes. We're good. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so true. They just had an article on the news about how more people are getting mugged leaving the stores and everything. And I was telling my husband, I'm like, now everybody's going to be even more online shopping because they're scared, right? You got to live life.
Yeah. And just have a plan. I mean, if you have a plan if everything goes right, and have a plan if everything goes to what.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate you coming on my show. It's always my pleasure.
Cool. And I'm going to hold you to that. You got to get out here. We got to get shooting.
All right, Ben, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your information with us. That was a spectacular interview. I learned so much about strategies on how to
avoid crowds because I'm not really a fan of crowds. But, if you are stuck in there, how do you get out of it? How do you stay safe? What kind of cues do you look for when things are about to turn nasty? And, it's not far-fetched to think that some of us might want to get a little bit more politically involved, given the boisterousness of some of the outlying opinions. If the middle people and don't stand up and really make a stance, then their voice will not get heard. So, there might come a time when you want to be at a political rally or talking for, a talking point that you support and agree with, and you find yourself in this situation and it turns awry for one reason or another. You got to have a strategy and you got to have a plan on how to handle that. And Ben gave us some great tips today on how to do that. So thanks so much, Ben, for coming back on the show and sharing that with us. Thank you to all of my Patreon members. You guys are just the light of the Changing Earth podcast world. You guys keep the show going and keep the information flowing, and can't thank you enough. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. And if you would like to become a Patreon member, head on over to www.patreon.com/changingearth, or head on over to my website at www.authorSaraFHathaway.com. Check that out. Got lots of great goodies for you guys, and I really appreciate everything that you do and your support for the show. Happy New Year to my listeners. You guys are just all awesome out there, soaking in the info, enjoying the stories, and couldn't thank you enough. And Happy New Year. I hope 2019 is a rock star year for you. And until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, Battle for the South, and Dark Days in Denver at www.authorsarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.